We have the grandkids over tonight. Actually, we've had the grandkids over throughout this week, and it's been a lot of fun. 3 of our 4 grandkids are staying with us at least through tonight. I think my firstborn's going to pick them up a little bit later on, maybe even during the middle of this broadcast. But the reason I bring that up is that I look at them and I think, my goodness, where's the time gone? I mean, I have grandkids. I'm granddaddy, not just, Midwest Sportsnet guy. I'm granddaddy. We have an 8-year-old here and a 5-year-old here and one that's not quite a year old. He's a hoss. He's already a hoss and walks everywhere. But you look at it and go, where's the time gone? And I think about that even for what we're doing right now. I mean, we're at the midpoint of this NAIA football season. We are 6 weeks in and 6 weeks to go of this regular season. And you think, where's the time gone? I mean, it's gone by quickly. It's been a lot of fun, though. I've enjoyed it. Hopefully you've enjoyed it as well. First off, let me remind you that you are awesome. And secondly, let me say thanks for stopping by tonight. College football this week on Midwest Sportsnet. We have a lot to talk about here, and we'll get right to it. But first, let's give a shout out really quickly. Matt, thank you for stopping by tonight. It's always a good day to be a Comet, right? Is that the case? I think so. Let me push the right button there. Matt, roll Mets. You have an opportunity to continue rolling this week. We'll definitely hit that matchup a little bit later on tonight. And for anyone else that's here for the live version especially, let us know in the chat that you're here and tell us for whom you cheer, or maybe even from where you're watching tonight here, Midwest Sportsnet. All right, let's look at something quickly, and that would be this. If it will come up, NAIA coaches poll for this week, and that is what it looks like in the top 10. Now, honestly, this is the only time I'm going to say this, but I was going to have the NAIA coaches poll and in its entirety and the NAIA F-ball media poll in its entirety in a graphic. That was all I had time for with grandkids. So that's the last time I'm going to say it. But you needed to see this. Are we going to talk about this a little bit later on? Absolutely. We're going to talk about this a little bit later on, but you just needed to see it to begin with. So we go ahead and move on into our portion of this midweek show because we're previewing tonight. Should have had the blue graphic up there with that. Oh, it's red. That's okay. There'll be a blue graphic in the thumbnail. We're previewing tonight here on the Thursday edition, and we'll have the Bet the Barn segment a little bit later on as well. Let's look at these games. It's an abridged slate because it's the ever popular holiday for the Hart Conference and holiday for the KCAC. That's that bye week, and all of the teams are on hiatus this week, so a little bit smaller schedule. Kaiser, however, the number 2 team in the country in the coaches poll, is undefeated and rightfully the number 2 team in the country right now. And the Seahawks are going on the road, and this is a big Sun Conference matchup. Florida Memorial coming off 2 straight wins to, well, I guess not just start the season, but continue the season right now. The Lions are 2-2. 6th meeting between these 2 programs. Kaiser has won all 5 of the previous meetings, including 51-16 last year. And the average margin of victory of Kaiser over Florida Memorial hasn't really been close. 34.8 points per game. That is the average margin of victory of the Seahawks in this series. Kaiser last week beat Thomas by, well, more than that, 49-3 the final there, and Florida Memorial with an upset over Southeastern, beating a ranked team for the first time in program history. 28-23 was the final, and the Lions got production from Tycon Wiggin, who made his first collegiate start on Saturday. 295 passing yards in that game. That average, of course, it's a small sample with just one game, is good enough to be 9th in the NAIA. Had a passing touchdown and an interception as well. So the Lions get the home field advantage, but there hasn't really been any kind of advantage for Florida Memorial over Kaiser to this point. So what kind of adjustments is Coach Jones going to make? His first season, his first opportunity to make some kind of difference against the Seahawks. We'll see what happens on Saturday. Shout out to Dave, Roll Stayings. We'll talk about the Stayings a little bit more as well. As a matter of fact, pretty sure that Morningside finds its way into the Bet the Barn segment. Continuing on through our schedule, Thomas is 0-5 right now, taking on a Southeastern team that dropped a heartbreaker in the closing seconds to Florida Memorial last week. The Fire are 2-2. 3rd meeting between these 2 programs. Southeastern has won each of the previous 2, 45-17 last year, 34-20 a couple of years ago. Southeastern is number 11 in the country in sacks with 15 of those, and Thomas Ibrahim has 6.5 sacks. The defense has been strong for Southeastern over the course of the year, so hoping it is strong again for the Fire against Thomas to try to get back on the winning track there. And the Nighthawks just trying to get a win this season. Weber International 3-2 on the road at Ave Maria 1-3, 15th meeting between the two. Weber International has a slight edge all time, 8-6 overall, and won last year 28-0. Weber International is scoring just 22.8 points a game. And we've talked about the Warriors and that the offense really hasn't been the stronger point for this team. It's been defense and been special teams along the way as well. Ave Maria, however, their defense is giving up 40.8 points per game. So this may be that opportunity for the Warriors to try to put some points on the board and pick up win number 4 on the season. St. Thomas 3-1 at Warner. The Royals are still without a win at 0-4, 8th meeting between the two. The Bobcats have won all 7 of the previous meetings, winning 60-32 last year. St. Thomas beat Ave Maria, shutting them out 59-0 last week. And Jalen Thomas had 2 punt returns for touchdowns this season. He leads the NAIA in that category for St. Thomas. Rio Grande 0-4, Pikeville 0-4, first meeting between the two, and someone has to get a win. And even though both these teams are winless, I think that it's clear we're going to say here on Midwest Sportsnet the Bears have a favorable matchup in this game over the first-year program in the Red Storm. Rio Grande lost to Kentucky Christian last week. U-Pike lost to Division III Maryville last week in the closing minutes. Rio Grande really still trying to find some way to get the offense settled down. They put in 2 freshmen and 1 sophomore, 3 players having seen time at the quarterback position in 4 games, needing to settle in on someone. Meanwhile, Pikeville, well, they've settled in on Xavier Malone, and rightfully so. He leads the NAIA with 372 passing yards per game. And McWilliams has 84 carries this year, but he also has 35 receptions. I mean, this was a player that we were touting as a strong running back, one of the top 5 running backs returning to his program for 2025. And he's been utilized in many more ways than just out of the backfield to carry the ball on the run game. He's been able to pick up some receptions as well, has 509 all-purpose yards for the season. Pikeville trying to get its first win, and it would be a conference win as well. And that's what the Bears need, just to run through the conference and find a way to get back to the playoffs, just like they did in 2024. Point is 1-4 coming off the first win of the season. They beat Bluefield last week by 13, 27-14. Point is on the road at Union Commonwealth. And the 9th meeting between the two sees this series tied at 4 wins apiece between the two programs. Reinhardt at 2-3. Kentucky Christian at 2-2. 11th meeting between the schools. The Eagles have won 9 of 10 over the Knights in this series, and Reinhardt won 41-20 in 2024. The last time Kentucky Christian won in the series was back in 2014, a 31-21 win back then. It's a non-conference matchup for these two. It's an Appalachian versus Mid-South Conference matchup, and all the way into Week 7. That's really kind of interesting. Reinhardt has a strong ground game this year. Quarterbacks, though, have been the ones taking the ball in for the score. Taylor Jackson, Ethan Rice have combined for 7 of the 12 touchdowns scored on the ground game for Reinhardt. Meanwhile, for Kentucky Christian, Jackson Wasik is starting to look strong, and I guess for Coach Aubrey, he's been looking strong all season long, averaging 281.5 passing yards per game, 9th in the NAIA in that category. He has 11 touchdowns to just 1 interception. Georgetown, after the loss last week, trying to right the ship. They'll get a chance to do that at Faulkner. Both teams are 3-2 right now in the season. 10th meeting between the two. Georgetown 7-2 all-time, winning 45-14 in 2024, and the Tigers have won 5 straight in the series. The last time Faulkner won was in 2015. It was a 44-0 shutout just then. Garrick Slunaker and Guy Bailey both had productive weeks last week against Lindsey Wilson. Quality outing, but neither one was able to put points on the board. The only touchdown was a rushing touchdown for Georgetown. Wasn't from either of them. And I know it has to be a little bit different for Coach Perrin and his team. You know, you settle in on something, you work on it in the spring, you work on it in the fall camp, and Darius Neal has decided to take his talents elsewhere at the start of the season with one game already in the books. So looking at things different for the Tigers than what they had set out to do, you have to think it's a different feel there. Is this an opportunity to make things right on the road at Faulkner? Braxton Berry, point out somebody new for Faulkner this week. He's the punter. He leads the NAIA with 46.1 yards per punt, has 10 that have been dropped inside the 20, and no touchbacks. So if you want to flip the field, he's definitely the person to get the job done there for you. Remember that name, Braxton Berry for Faulkner. Cumberland's 3-2 on the road at undefeated Lindsey Wilson for this one, 12th meeting between the two programs. For Cumberland's Drew Gregg, he has just been the man. 15 passing touchdowns this year. That's tied for 7th in the NAIA, completing 60% of his passes, 237.8 yards per game. He's been a big part of what the University of Cumberland's have been able to do to go to 3-2 this year. Meanwhile, for Lindsey Wilson, we had a chance to talk with Chris Wells about this last week because he was on the show Sunday night, the play-by-play voice of the Blue Raiders. Tate Rice has just stepped right in. Now, you look at these numbers, just 190 passing yards per game. That's 44th in the NAIA, right there in the middle of the pack, but he's completing 69.7% of his passes. He also has that 11-1 touchdown to interception ratio. So Tate Rice in the 4 games, 3 plus a whole lot, we'll call it 4 games, that he's been able to compete for Lindsey Wilson. He's just flat getting it done. He's been very effective. I would say I've used the term manage the game well before, but it's just the smaller amount of passing yards. So you get a few of those, you get an explosive player too. That's going to bring that number up. But the big deal that he has and has to be proud of for Coach Kleckler is 5. Yeah, that's right. 5 in the win column, 5-0 on the season. Tay Saunders, 123 rushing yards per game, 5th in the NAIA. He has 7 rushing touchdowns as well. Lindsey Wilson at home taking on Cumberland's in this Mid-South game. Cumberland, the Phoenix on the road at Bethel. Phoenix are 3-2. Bethel now 2-2 after a little bit of a rough start. 32nd meeting between these two programs. Bethel won by a touchdown, 21-14 last year. Cumberland is Bethel's most often played opponent, and both of these schools just trying to pick up wins on this one, needing to get a win here to stay alive in that conference race, that ever-important Mid-South Conference race, because it's a tough conference. And again, as Chris mentioned last week, it's a very brutal conference, and now's the time you start beating up on one another. Marion, as we move from the Mid-South to the Mid-States, on the road at Taylor. This was a tough one last year. A 1-point win for Marion against Taylor, 35-34. But it's not the only win that Marion has in the series. In the 18 previous meetings, Marion's won 17 of 18. Taylor last won in 2009. How's that better? That's a little better. The last time Taylor won in this series was 2009. It also was a 1-point win, 36-35. Marion has won 15 straight in this series. Coming off a win off Madonna last week, and Taylor losing to St. Francis of Indiana by 14. A couple of running backs to note in this matchup. Keegan LaBelle, averaging 111.5 yards per game, 9th in the NAIA, 7 rushing touchdowns. And Taylor is led by Nathan Parker, 138.6 rushing yards per game. That's good enough for 3rd in the nation. He has 12 rushing touchdowns, 693 yards of rushing overall. St. Francis of Indiana, we mentioned a 14-point win last week. And the Cougars are on the road at the Crusaders of Madonna, 4-1, taking on 1-4. 5th meeting between the two. St. Francis has won all 4, including a 77 win last year. Siena Heights, the farewell tour continues. 2-2 on the year. St. Xavier, 3-2 on the year. 6th meeting between these two. St. Xavier 4-1 all time. Siena Heights trying to pick up a win in the last time these two teams will meet. And DJ Young, he's someone of note for the Saints, has 3 kickoff returns for touchdowns. That leads the NAIA in that category. All right. Still here, just growing. Go Rio Storm. That's all right, old man. That is okay. We still have to point it out. It is a favorable matchup for Pikeville, and I think that the area in which you're growing, quarterback has to be one of those, as we pointed out, a couple of freshmen, a sophomore, each trying to find their way in that position. Haven't been able to find exactly what Coach Thurston needs just yet, but continue to grow, Rio Storm. Rio Red Storm, continue to grow. All right, let's see. Speaking along those lines about continuing to grow, someone gets an opportunity to glow up a little bit this week. Lawrence Tech 0-4, at Judson 0-5. Someone's going to come out with a win. Second meeting between the two. The Blue Devils blew the Eagles out of the water in 2024, 77-18, and trying to see if they can continue that winning way against a program, again, just meeting twice. Here's another one with the second meeting all time. Defiance at Olivet Nazarene. It wasn't the second meeting of, well, we met last year and we're going to play again this year. The only time these two teams have met before. Defiance won 51-7 all the way back in 1993. That's the year I got married, by the way. So it's been a long time since those two teams have played. Olivet Nazarene 3-1, Defiance 2-3 on the year. We move on to the GPAC. And Dave, familiar with the Stangs. Mustangs are on the road, taking on the Tigers of Dakota Wesleyan. Morningside 4-1, Dakota Wesleyan 2-2. 28th meeting between these two schools. And in the previous 27, Morningside has won 26. The Mustangs have won 22 straight in the series. Dakota Wesleyan last beat Morningside 33-29 in 2002. So it's been a little bit of a drought for the Tigers in this one. Needing to get some offense, Dakota Wesleyan finally found a little bit of offense last week in a 33-7 victory over Doane. Meanwhile, for Morningside, it's been Zach Chevalier to Drew Sellen pretty much all season long. Chevalier leading the way for his team, 339.6 passing yards per game, third in the NAI, 21 passing touchdowns. That leads the way for, quarterbacks, passing touchdowns. Leads the way in the NAIA right there. Drew Sellen also in the top three in receiving touchdowns for his part for the Mustangs. So Morningside trying to continue after the opening season loss against Benedictine and working its way through the challenging portion of the GPAC. It gets tougher after this for Morningside, and I wanted to have that already up. So give me just a second. I know we're live right here. I'm going to pull up that Morningside schedule because it becomes increasingly more challenging for the Mustangs over the course of the remainder of the season. Not that the first part of the schedule was definitely that easy. However, in the next 5 games following Dakota Wesleyan, the second half of the schedule, you get Northwestern at Northwestern, then hosting Concordia. We've seen that the Bulldogs have been tough. Doane on the road at Doane, and then 2 games to close out the season at home against Mount Marty, who is making its way into Tier 1 of the GPAC, and Dordt, definitely up there at the top, sharing the spot at the top of the leaderboard now in conference play. So Morningside schedule, I think this was alluded to last week. It's definitely backloaded. And so Morningside can't look past Dakota Wesleyan this week, again, on the road in South Dakota for this matchup. Midland at Concordia, 73rd meeting between these two. Midland owns a 39-32 advantage with 1 tie. Concordia won 45-13 last year in the season finale. This one's going to show up in our Bet the Barn numbers, so look for that a little bit later on. Tyson Dankert, 25 carries for 64 yards in the loss last week against Doane, a 1-point loss, 19-18. He had 1 rushing touchdown, but really not the production that they needed from him. Concordia, by the way, hasn't given up a sack all season long, 9 straight wins going back to 2024. And the play of Carlos Colasso earned him the GPAC Player of the Week honor, 39 carries, 283 rushing yards. And the final drive in which the Bulldogs scored a touchdown was 6 plays, and all 6 were Colasso carries, including a 29-yard run for a touchdown. Northwestern is at 2-3, unfamiliar territory of late for the Red Raiders, on the road at Briar Cliff, who's at 4-2. And the Chargers making a statement in the GPAC as well. A win at home over Northwestern, wow, that would be really, really big. It would be even bigger if you know that Northwestern has never lost to Briar Cliff. 22-0 all time in 22 previous meetings, 23rd meeting, and Northwestern won 71-7 last year. Again, first time for 3 regular season losses for Northwestern since 2016, and the Red Raiders went 4-6 at that point. Northwestern's defense, though, That's been key for the Red Raiders. Since scoring 40 on Waldorf, Northwestern's offense has scored only 66 points. They're averaging 16.5 points a game in the 4 games following the season opener. But the defense has been strong, led by Levi Egley, a senior at defensive end. His brother's a linebacker, too. Egley has 3.5 tackles for loss and 3 sacks on the season. Meanwhile, for Briar Cliff, it's Brock Saya. 1,515 passing yards, 66.1 completion percentage. He has 10 touchdowns thrown. The negative stat there is there's been 7 interceptions as well. He has a couple of rushing touchdowns, too. Big game in Sioux City on Saturday. Dordt is 4-0 on the road in Forest City, taking on Waldorf 0-6. And you could say a lot about this. I choose to look at the positive here and what Dort's done, and I'd like to point out the play of Noah Strickfaden, the leading rusher on this team. That's right. He's the quarterback, but he's also the leading rusher on this team. 241 rushing yards, 8.6 yards per carry when they call his number, has a couple of rushing touchdowns as well. 53% completion for the season through the air, but he's thrown 6 touchdown passes. And where Dordt may have looked at, or I'm sure that Coach Penner didn't look at the offense as a lesser point, but you look at the numbers. Offensively last year, it seemed to be a bit of a struggle. The defense for the previous 3 years has been very strong. You get a good offense with that Dordt defender defense, and things are going to happen, and it's what's happened so far this year. Dordt undefeated at 4-0. One more in the GPAC. And this game, was circled on the calendar by Mount Marty. Mount Marty 3-2 on the road at Doane. The Tigers are just 1-4. 5th meeting between the two, but Doane has won 3 of the previous 4, including a 22-21 win last season in the season finale. Dordt went for 2 on the final play. Let's set this up. Last year, Dordt went 12 plays, Doane, trailing Mount Marty 21-14, went 12 plays on the final drive, 2.5 minutes taken off the clock. They scored on the final play of the game, which is a 12-yard touchdown pass, went for 2 off the final touchdown on the final play of the game in the final drive of the game, and Mount Marty, the defense just not quite there. Doane scores 22-21. Mount Marty drops to 6-5 on the year. Now, for the Lancers, you have to say, hey, this was the first winning season in program history. It can't be that bad. But if you have that 7th game in your grasp and it just eludes you, this one's been on the calendar for a long, long time. So Mount Marty looking to get revenge on the road on Saturday. Rugby Riken, dual sports star, dual threat, by the way. Quarterback throwing 232 passing yards per game. Last week, connected for 424 passing yards in a loss, I might add. 13 touchdown passes on the season. But he's also thrown exactly 1 interception in each of the 5 games he's played. So there is the downfall in that one. And the interception last week, really, that was key in that game because it was a quick turnaround, points back on the board for Concordia. Doane is led by Sam Hartman, averaging 223.5 passing yards a game, 3 touchdowns. He also has thrown 5 interceptions on the year. So Mount Marty at Doane in this one. Shout out to everyone watching tonight. Old Man watching and cheering on the Red Storm. Of course, Dave cheering on the Stangs. Matt cheering on the Comments. Who are you cheering for tonight on Midwest Sportsnet here on this edition of College Football This Week? Glad you're along for the ride. If you haven't already subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do that. You can become a member as well. We just appreciate you guys following along. And I mentioned something in the members only short that was posted this week. I'm going to allude to it right now. Got a trip across the Red River tomorrow. And if you're familiar with this time of year in Division I football, it's time for the Red River Shootout. So got a trip. I'll say we're heading down there, and it is very likely that there will be some good content on the channel tomorrow. Now, I know we cover a lot of small college sports, but occasionally we dip a toe in the Division I water and see what we can do, see if we can swim or if the water's just too cold. We'll find out tomorrow, and be sure and be watching the channel for that. Again, if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. OUAZ is undefeated and on the road at Texas College, and the Steers are 0-5 after that 7-4 year last year, 0-5. And OUAZ, 6-0 all-time against Texas College, won last year by 25 points. Luke Giron 250.3 passing yards per game. 11 touchdowns thrown and 2 interceptions. Nelson on the road at Oklahoma Panhandle State, 17th meeting between the two. OPSU is 9-7 all-time between the two, but Nelson won by 10 last year. Louisiana Christian on the road at Texas Wesleyan, both teams with winning records. Louisiana Christian's 4-2 right now, 3-0 in Sooner Athletic Conference play. The Rams are 3-2, 5th meeting between the two, and this one is all knotted out at 2 wins apiece for these two schools. Texas Wesleyan won last year 63-42 in the season finale. And that was one of those games, you have to think the Rams had that one on the calendar circled because the year before, Louisiana Christian had won 34-24, also the season finale. And in that game, if Texas Wesleyan had won or lost by only 9, the Rams would have gone to the playoffs. And Louisiana Christian won by 10. Amazing how those things turn out. So we'll see how this one turns out. It's going to be in Fort Worth. That is on Saturday. And one more in the Sooner Athletic Conference. Arkansas Baptist 2-3 on the road at Langston 1-4. 5th meeting between the two. The Langston Lions have won all 4 of the previous, including a 42-0 shutout in 2024. Looking at the numbers here, Langston has outscored Arkansas Baptist 223-34 all time in this series. Now, Langston's 1-4, and this is relatively unfamiliar territory for the Lions. In fact, the last time that Langston started a season 1-4 was 2013, and actually they started the season at 0-4, but then won 6 straight games to win the Central States Football League, the now defunct Central States Football League. Many of those schools play in the Sooner Athletic Conference right now. The Lions did not make the playoffs that year because Langston finished the regular season at number 21 in the coaches poll. Now, at this point in time, it was a playoff field of just 16 teams that made the NAIA Football Championship Series. And in order to be a part of that playoff field, you had to be ranked in the top 20 of the coaches poll. It didn't matter if you won your conference. Actually, didn't matter what your record was if you were not in the top 20 of the coaches poll. Langston started the season 0-4, but got on a tear and went undefeated through conference play and was really one of the hottest teams in the country, but did not get to make the playoffs because they were not ranked in the coaches poll. I'd also like you to consider who Langston lost to in those 4 games in 2013. Northern Colorado, Division I at the time, still Division I. Incarnate Word, Division II at the time, now Division I. Nickel State, Division I. Northwestern State, Division I. Langston lost 4 games to open the season to 3 Division I programs and 1 Division II program and took care of business against the NAIA programs that it faced on the schedule. If this sounds familiar, it should, because in 2022, a team lost the first 3 games, or lost 3 of the first 4 games of the season to a Division I school and 2 Division II schools, but won every game it played against NAIA competition. And the Kaiser Seahawks went on to make the playoffs that year. In fact, the Kaiser Seahawks went on to play for a national championship that year, winning the following year. I wonder if they've thought about that, if Kaiser, if you had to be in the top 20 to be voted in, which, by the way, at that point in time, still did have to be in the top 20 to be a part of the playoff field, what would happen if they were number 21? Obviously, wouldn't have been able to make it in. I'd like you to consider the converse for a moment. What would have happened if Langston had been number 20? The Lions were one of the hottest teams in the country at that point in time. Again, losses coming to much larger rosters and competition. Could Langston have made a run in 2013? We'll never know. But I bring that out because of what we talked about at the beginning. We were going to talk about the coaches poll. We're going to continue to talk about the coaches poll here in just a moment. You just needed to have that as a little bit more for backstory. And we move on to the Frontier Conference. Carroll, 4-1 on the road at Montana Western, 4-1. The 120th meeting unofficially all time between these two programs. Carroll 77-40-2 all time, but Montana Western won 27-14 last year, and that was really instrumental in keeping the Saints out of the playoffs last year. Carroll beat Arizona Christian last week 34-12. Montana Western beat Southern Oregon 40-20. Caden Hewitt had a fantastic afternoon, and so did Michael Palandri. Palandri, by the way, this season, 341.6 passing yards per game, second in the NAI. 17 touchdowns, that's fourth in the NAI, to just one interception. A 71.7% completion rate. Michael Palandri is having himself a season. And I'll mention one more punter, by the way. How about McLean Berkeley? 44.4 yards per punt, has dropped 10 inside the 20. Again, you want to flip a field? How big could that be on Saturday if Carroll's doing well or Montana's Western is doing well? Flipping the field, how big will a punter come into play? We'll find out. Just wanting you to know that name. Dakota State 3-2 at Dickinson State 2-3. 29th meeting between the two. Dickinson State is 26-2 all time. The Blue Hawks won 38-21 and 38-7 in 2024. Remember, they played 2 games that year and have won 13 straight overall in the series. Now, for Dakota State, Trey Heddick is having himself a season now that he's back, throwing for 296 passing yards per game, 8th in the NAIA. For Dickinson State, the Pete Stanton count continues. He's now at 97 wins, still there after the loss last week. 3 losses on the season. Dickinson State has lost 3 straight in the regular season as well. And the last time that happened was 2013. The Blue Hawks went 1-10 in 2013. And the next year, enter Pete Stanton as the head coach. He was already one of the assistant coach, but they named him the head coach then. Yeah, that 1-13 year, 5 losses. Dickinson State beat Jamestown, and then 5 more losses. And then Coach Stanton became the head coach, and 12 seasons, or 11 and a half, I guess, at this point later, 97 wins, 10 conference championships, 10 straight playoff appearances. Mayville State, how about those Comets? 4-2 on the road at Valley City State. 99th meeting between the two programs. The Vikings own a big-time advantage in this one, 71 wins of the previous 98 games. They split the 2 games they played in 2024. Mayville State beat Dickinson State last week 34-32. The final in 3 overtimes. It stopped a 20-game slide against Dickinson State. Now, the last time Mayville State won was in 2011, but you have to remember that in the North Star, there were many years in which 2 teams had to play each other twice over the course of the season. So, yes, it's a 14-year slide, but it's actually a 20-game slide to Dickinson State. Again, last 20 in 2011. Mayville State had some good play from Aiden Marcusson on the day in that win. Valley City State has Joey Cave at the quarterback spot for the Vikings. Again, Mayville State on the road. Matt, we're going to hear anything about this game? Love to hear your thoughts on this. We move on to Arizona Christian at 1-3 and Eastern Oregon at 1-3. Third meeting between the two schools, and the Firestorm going on the road up the West Coast to take on the Mountaineers in this one. Eastern Oregon won the previous 2 meetings between the two schools. Southern Oregon at Simpson, third meeting of the two schools, but we go back to teams playing each other twice. Simpson and Southern Oregon have already played once this year, and the Raiders won 59-0 in the season opener for both programs, won 70-7 back in 2024. Simpson now 0-5 on the season. Southern Oregon just 1-4. And Montana Tech is 6-0 at Montana State Northern, 1-4. 66th meeting between the two. Tech leads 40-25 all-time, won by 40 last year. Montana Tech beat Dakota State 49-21 last week. Montana State Northern beat Eastern Oregon 23-7 a couple of weeks ago. Jarrett Wilson, the Frontier Conference Offensive Player of the Week, scored with a passing touchdown, 3 of those actually, a rushing touchdown, had a receiving touchdown as well. Levi Torgerson has 5 receiving touchdowns on the year, 4 non-receiving touchdowns on the year. He's 3 for 3 passing for 47 yards, and 2 of those were for touchdowns. For Torgerson, 9 touchdowns total on the year. Of receivers in the NAI, Drew Sellen has 10. He leads the way. A.J. King has 10, also at the top of that list. And Matthew Holthusen with 9. Torgerson, not all 9 of him are receiving touchdowns, but he's still up there among the tops. And for MSU Northern, the Lights have had one or fewer wins every year starting in 2015. So 10 seasons prior, either one or no wins. Can they pick up one win at home against one of the hottest teams in the country? We'll find out. All right, let's see what Matt has to say here. Heard on a local show this week that the last time the Comets beat both Valley and Dickinson in the same year was 1971. Okay, that research goes beyond mine, Matt. I didn't put the two together on that one. Wow. Let me give you some perspective then on that one to go along with that stat, okay, Matt? I was born in 1971. I think I bit my lip before I said that. I don't know what. Anyway, I was born in 1971, so that would be an interesting stat. We'll see if something big happens for Mayville State this week on the road. All right. I brought up the coaches ranking a little bit earlier, and let's bring it back up here one more time just to take a look at it. Let's see here. Let's bring it up there. There we go. Okay. Grandview, Kaiser, Benedictine, Morningside, following week 6 in the NAI coaches poll. Those are all the same. Friends moved up from number 6 to number 5. Lindsey Wilson moved up from number 7 to number 6, and Montana Tech fell from number 5 to number 7. It's just a poll. I mean, realistically, it's just a poll, but there were people who were concerned, and I get it. I totally understand. I mean, you look at that, and you have to say, why? All three teams won. And I mean, you know of anything, if anyone's going to be on the Friends train, we're going to be on the Friends train here. There's no question about that. But Friends' win was probably the least impressive of the three wins that we're talking about last week of Montana Tech and Friends and Lindsey Wilson. And Friends moved up to number 5. Lindsey Wilson, big time win over Georgetown. They move up, but Montana Tech had a win too against a decent opponent. Why would Montana Tech fall? Now, there has been speculation over the course of the week as to how or why this would happen. Are coaches looking at some wins better than others? Did a coach not vote? What all went on in this as to why this happened? And ultimately, there are a couple of things that I think we should take away from it. Number one, the poll will, over the course of a season, and that's a key phrase there, over the course of a season, find a way to correct itself generally. I mean, things in the middle, they happen. It can be here or there, and you can't always say that just because something happened midway through the season that you've got to go with that and stick with that. I would say also, though, it's not the how. It's not the why. It's simply that it happened. The simple fact that midway through a season, in a coaches poll, a team that was number 5 in the country, 6-0 now for the first time in program history, winning handily against some pretty good teams, dropped 2 spots in the poll. How does something like that happen? What if something like that happened later on? Well, Joey, it's just a fluke. It's not going to happen all the time. That's true, but it did happen. What if it happens later on in the season? This is why the NAI did such a fantastic job this year, and I say this with no sarcasm. This is the honest truth. This is why the National Administrative Council and the NAI did a great job in removing the coaches' ranking. It is a ranking. Removing the coaches' ranking from the criteria to be in the football championship series playoff field. It's never had a place there. Is it good to have a ranking over the course of the season? Absolutely. It's fun. The ranking should be a big part of your resume. It should be based on your resume. And I will quote Josh Pate on this one. He is one of the best people in the country right now on any level of college football coverage. And I will give him the benefit of the doubt. I'll say that I get it from him. But your ranking should be based on your resume. And your resume is what you've done over the season, not what people thought you were going to do in the preseason. At this point of the year, preseason thoughts should be out the window. It should all be about what's been done on the field. Bringing in the football performance index, that's fantastic. Those numbers, that is also, hand in hand, 1A and 1B of the greatest things that the NAI and the National Administrative Council did in changing the criteria for being a part of the football playoff championship series field. Absolutely. Great decisions there. Well, what if this were to happen? What if it was still there? What if some random school that was number 23 in the country start off the season maybe a little weaker, building its way back up, winning, and in the last week of the season wins its game, thinks it's in the top 25, but a fluke like this happens and they get dropped out? Does that team no longer deserve to be in the playoff field because it wasn't in the coaches' rankings? Absolutely not. So I commend the NAI. I mean that we say it so thankfully. What a great decision to remove that as one of the criterion for being a part of the playoff field. The Football Performance Index is fantastic. We're seeing some solid numbers from that, and I think, again, that will work itself out over the course of the season as well. But it's a nice thing to look at. So we are to the point where it needed to be talked about. Ultimately, the rankings are good if they're done right, and they're good. But ultimately, also, they're not a part of the criterion anymore. So it is what it is. We can talk about it, but the selection committee now has the full-on challenge of itself, with a little help from some area rankings as well, to determine who's going to be in the playoff field. All right. We went through a lot of games, but there really weren't that many. In fact, there are only 30 on the docket tonight. So it seems to be a little bit shorter show, but I want to give you all a chance to play along, because there are some games this week that, you know what, you're interested in the ultimately the final score, but you want to play along and see if some things happen along the way. Let's find out about some things right here as we find out what in the world would you bet the barn on. Okay, I have the carriage house out here. It's a barn, but I have the carriage house out here. I'm looking in that direction over toward the west, at least where I am right now. The carriage house is there. Mrs. Midwest Sportsnet would probably not want me to bet it on anything unless I were absolutely certain. So we put some lines down on some of the games. No favorites. We're not picking favorites in this, just totals and prop bets. And I want to see who or if this is enough to get some action on both sides of the line. That's the way we try to get this, just like Vegas does. They want to get action on both sides of the bet and see how many people are going to come out and win some money. So we go to our Bet the Barn segment, and in that segment, let's see, what was the first one here? I may just have to put that on. All right, here we go. First one in our Bet the Barn segment. And this is one where, we're not sure exactly how this one's going to play out. We just figure these two teams have some pretty strong offenses. Carroll is putting up 395 yards of offense a game. Montana Western, 442 yards of offense a game. So the total here, we were giving a total over-under on this one. Which one would you take? Over-under between these two teams, 679.5 yards. That means the two teams have to score at least, or have to put up at least 680 yards of total offense between the two. So if you're going to bet on this one and you want to go ahead and get it down in the live chat tonight, let's go ahead. Let's go with, since they're at home, UMW. If you're going to bet this, UMW yards, over or under. UMW yards, over or under. And if you are watching this on demand and you are putting this in the comments, go with UMW yards, over or under. Anyone want to bet this one tonight? Wait just a little bit to see if anyone takes this action in the chat. And Dave is saying over. UMW over. Let me go ahead and make sure we can see it there. Dave is saying, you're on record, Dave. I think it's a quality decision. I mean, I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at these two quarterbacks alone. What Caden Hewitt has done, strong arm, strong legs, he's able to get things done. Michael Palandri, I mean, by himself, averaging 341 passing yards per game. If he gets that, that's half of that he would need for an over. Can the Carroll defense shut him down? That's the thing. Carroll's defense is historically good. Don't know if anyone else is going to take any action on the chat tonight, so let's see here. Matt is going to as well. Over, UMW, over. But you know what? I'm going to go with you guys too. That was my take on this. I'm going over. When I put the line on this one, I was concerned that it was too low, so I haven't seen anyone take the under on this one. I think maybe it could have been a little bit too low. I'm taking the over on this one too. Although that should probably make you guys a little bit worried because I have not won that much on this at all. Western offense is good. Absolutely. No question about that. The Western offense is good. I think you know a little bit about that, probably up close and personal from last year as well, too. Probably some bittersweet memories thinking about that offense, too. All right, let's go on to the next one here. What is up next? This one's a prop bet. Concordia. The Bulldogs have not given up a sack all season long. Have not given up a sack all season long. Will they give one up on this one? This is the first one we've had on these bets that could actually be a push. This one could be tied at 0-0 or 1-1 or whatever the case may be. So on this one, CUNE, if you want to bet on this one, you want to go on record betting on this one, which one do you think? CUNE create sacks or CUNE give up sacks? Midland's defense is pretty tough. This one's going to be a challenge for Concordia's line, I think. Now, the Bulldogs, we're not picking this game, and I think what Gideon Stark has done in leading that offense this year has been great for Coach Daberco. I think if you should feel strongly about that, and even if they were to give up a sack or sacks in this one, Stark's still going to find a way to distribute the ball and get it out there and get that done well. Can Concordia get into the Midland backfield? Pair of good running backs on this Midland team. So getting the ball away and getting the ball quickly into a running back's hand, that could factor in. So CUNE, do you want to create sacks or give up sacks? Here's your opportunity to bet this one. Prop bet. Will they create more sacks or give up more sacks? Look to the chat. A little bit of time here. What do you think, gentlemen? Am I going to have to say mine first? All right. Dave goes ahead and says, Concordia is going to create more sacks. Let's see here. There it is. On record is saying create more. Matt, also on record is saying create more sacks. I just want you to know that I really don't let Dave sway my thinking on these things, but I'm going with that too. I've been very impressed with the offensive line for Concordia. It's one of the things that Coach Daberco talked about in the offseason as well. He was pleased with what he saw on his offensive line, really felt like this was going to be a strength of his team. So I have to think that what they've done so far has been good, and I'm going to say they create more sacks on this one as well. I'm going on record as saying they create more sacks as well. And Dave says I shouldn't let him sway me. Okay, well, I'm not. I just want you to know I'm not letting you sway me on this. All right, next one. Here we go. Here's a totals bet. Over-under. Cumberland's on the road at Lindsey Wilson. The over-under is 56.5 points. I'm concerned about this line a little bit too. I think just like the rest of them, this one may go one way or may go all one way on this one. So let's look back at Cumberland and Lindsey Wilson. Between the two, these are two teams that have put up a lot of points this year. Cumberland's 36.8 points per game. Lindsey Wilson, 41.2 points per game. But to get over that 56.5 points, I don't think Lindsey Wilson is going to score in the 50s. Now, I'm not saying Lindsey Wilson can't win this game, stay undefeated. I don't know that I see them scoring in the 50s in this one. And if the Blue Raiders defense steps up like it did against a very good Georgetown team holding the Tigers to just 13, and if it does against a Texas Wesleyan team holding the Rams to just 10 in the season opener, can you go over even if you have the offense that says there's enough there? And for Cumberland's, I mean, you have to think for Cumberland's in this game, a win in this game, you almost want it to be a high-scoring game. You don't want to be stuck and your offense not able to get off the ground because this is a Lindsey Wilson team that very likely is going to put points on the board too. I know you got your 36. It's just 5 less than the 41, or actually 4.4 less. But I'm thinking if you're a Patriots fan, you would want this game to be a high-scoring game because you can run with them if the defense is not shutting you down. So over/under 56.5 points right here. Take the under. You're really saying these defenses are going to step in, and let's go with LWU, okay? LWU points. Over/under. LWU points. Let's see here. Or LW, that's fine, guys. See what the comments say here. Matt saying the defense is going to step up. So LW, between the two, it's going to be under. Going to be scoring under 56.5 points. This one could be one that if we weren't all watching it to begin with to the end, maybe watching this one to get to the end. Dave has the over on this one. Man, I thought about this one again because putting the line here, wanted to see if there was going to be enough to go both directions. Where would I go on this? And I am just barely saying the over. I want to say it's going to be over. And I think they crack 60, but I don't think it goes much more than that. So I'm going to say over on that one, but just barely. All right. And then the final one, by the way, if you're watching this on demand, we need, yeah. There we go. We did need a tiebreaker. So that one we'll definitely do that there. All right. Last one, and this one's one that, let's see, Dave, how do you feel about this? Prop bet, but it's just one team. Prop bet, but it's just one team. Morningside is going to be playing on the road this week. Morningside has been averaging a lot of yards over the course of this season. On the road at Dakota Wesleyan, the Mustangs are 26-1 all time between the two schools. So we're not betting, we're not picking lines here, not picking a favorite. Morningside's put up a lot of yards this year per game. More than 600 yards per game this year. Can they keep up close to that average? Because what do you want to do? You know this is the final game in this, this stretch of the season against a team that likely you should have a favorable matchup against. Don't want to take anyone for granted. Coach Ryan's not going to take anyone for granted, but we're having fun with it here. But the rest of the season gets to be a little bit more challenging. Do you try to assert your dominance here? Do you possibly get it to where if you run up the score a little bit, if they're able to do that, to where other players get some time, put some more yards on the board? Morningside, MC. So we're going over under yards, MC, over under yards, and the line is at 509.5. So you don't have to get the average over 600, but it can't be a day where you just piddle around. What do you think, gentlemen? All right, Dave, I see that. Let's get back over here where I can post that. Dave's taking the over, but that the word is that Dakota Wesleyan has a veteran secondary. Does that make it a little bit difficult for your favorite receiver there? Could be. Matt Herman also taking the over. Okay, this is the first time that it's been this close on all of them. So I'm hoping to see if anyone in the comments after this takes anything different. I'm taking the over too. I'm thinking at this point in time, this is your opportunity to really, possibly air it out a little bit more against some of these other defenses. I mean, you're coming up against a Northwestern defense next week that, even though it's a team that's 2-3 right now, first off, hasn't given up on the season. Secondly, the defense has been good anyway around. So, you try to push some things here. I think they do go over 509.5 yards. And we're gonna work on these lines then. If we're not getting enough action on both sides of them, we're gonna work on these lines. All right, that's what we're betting the barn on this week. Wow, another show in the books. I mentioned at the outset, I will mention it again. We talked about it briefly in the members only short earlier. I told you what I was going to do. I'm alluding to the fact that we're going to have some content on the channel tomorrow, and if it all works out, and I believe I have it confirmed to all work out, this should be good. Should be a lot of fun, and I hope that you'll stop by the channel and see what we're able to put on tomorrow, and then of course a big day of college football on Saturday. Now in the NAI, don't forget, only 30 games on the docket, so small college football is going to be a little bit lesser of a thing this week because the KCAC and the Heart both take their bye weeks right about now. But it's going to be fun to watch anywhere around, and everyone has that, at least in the chat so far tonight, has a rooting interest still playing on Saturday, so it should be a lot of fun. We'll be back live on Sunday, and don't forget, I will also say, because of course we're based here about 16 miles north of the Red River, it is Red River Shootout time, Division I, so we'll be following that matchup as well over the course of the day. But anyway, hey, thanks, Matt. Thanks for watching tonight. Thanks for being a part of it. Dave, thank you for being a part of it tonight. Old man, thank you for chiming into the chat as well. I appreciate that. And we have a lot more on the way, so Sunday should be a lot of fun, a lot to talk about. Anyway around, I invite you to come out and be a part of it, and be a part of the live stream too. And tell a friend. The channel, by the way, oh my goodness, the channel is continuing to grow, and it's growing at a very good pace. The goal is still 5,000 subscribers by the end of this calendar year. I've kind of given a little leeway there by January 11th because, that's when I hit the big 5-5. But by the end of the calendar year, we want to try to get there, and it's continuing to grow. So thank you. And if you get a chance, tell a friend. Tell someone in your family. Let them know there's good small college football coverage and more on Midwest Sportsnet. Thanks for watching, Matt. Thanks for watching, Dave. And to all the rest of you all tonight, if you are here on the live chat, you watched it all the way to the end, I commend you, and I'm so thankful. It's always good to visit with you. If you watch this on demand and you made it all the way to the end, you are an absolute trooper, and I commend you as well. God bless you all. Have a great night. And I will see you at least on the live side on Sunday. But don't forget, look on the channel tomorrow. Have a great night.